They called him guilty. She called him innocent. And what followed, nobody in that courtroom was ready for. "Mr. Carter, your client needs you to respond." Silence. Judge Hanlon shifted slightly, his eyebrow twitching, enough to show the irritation building. Behind his calm face, the courtroom was overflowing, rows of reporters. Curious onlookers, people waiting to see a young entrepreneur either collapse or somehow escape the storm. But defense attorney Marcus Carter only shook his head, closed his briefcase, and said in a cold, measured voice, "I am withdrawing from representation." "Your Honor, effective immediately." The gasp moved like a wave across the room. Some whispered, others grabbed their phones. But one person remained perfectly still. 9-year-old Lila Matthews, braids tied with tiny blue beads, wearing a dress too big for hers, sat quietly in the third row, behind the defense table. No one noticed her when she walked in. No one cared who she was. Not yet. Daniel Cross sat frozen at the table, 27 years old, founder of a startup in Oak Ridge, an app that helped families connect with safe housing during the crisis. Only a year ago, a magazine had called him the people's innovator. Now, he sat in chains, accused of a crime so vicious that strangers wanted to see him punished, but he hadn't done it. He knew that. And deep inside, he prayed someone else knew too. The judge struck the gavel once. "This is highly irregular, Mr. Carter." "I understand, Your Honor, but I have no further comment. I cannot stand behind a client who won't be honest with me." Another blow to Daniel's chest. It didn't matter if he had spoken truth. Everyone was convinced he hadn't. Then a voice cut through the silence. Small, steady, impossible to ignore. "I can defend him." The room froze. The judge leaned forward, confused. "Excuse me?" Lila rose to her feet, her voice trembled, but she stood firm. "I said, I can defend him." A chuckle rippled through the crowd. Someone near the front raised a phone and started recording. The bailiff stepped forward, unsure if this was a prank. "Little girl, what is your name?" the judge asked Lila Matthews. "And how old are you?" 9. The judge blinked. "I know I'm not a real lawyer," she said quickly, "but I've read about this case, and I know he didn't do it, I know." The crowd expected her to be escorted out, but Judge Hanlon didn't move. He looked at her with something between disbelief and curiosity. "And how would you know that, Miss Matthews?" "Because he saved my brother's life 2 years ago." Daniel turned slowly in his chair, his eyes finding hers. He remembered her face, but not the moment she spoke of. The courtroom leaned forward as one, reporters lowering their phones, every ear, straining toward her. Have you ever witnessed something so unbelievable that it forced you to question everything you thought you knew? Let us know in the comments. And tell us where you're watching from. Lila's small hands gripped the wooden bench, knuckles white. "I watched the videos. I read everything. They say he was at that warehouse, but he wasn't. He couldn't have been." The prosecutor scoffed. "Your Honor, this is a child. Let her speak." The judge interrupted, gasps again. No one had seen that coming. Lila stepped out from her row and walked toward the front as if she had done it 100 times before her. Voice cracked with emotion, but she never stopped. "I know you think I'm just a kid, but my brother believed in him. He was part of the youth program Daniel created. We had nothing, not even internet at home. But Daniel made sure every kid in our building got tablets and Wi-Fi. My brother was going to college because of him, but he never made it. He died last year." The silence in that courtroom was sharp, like a punch to the chest. "I want to speak for Daniel," she said, "because no one else will. And if I'm not allowed to, then maybe this court doesn't care about the truth." Judge Hanlon leaned back in his chair. Daniel sat frozen, eyes fixed on her. The bailiff didn't know what to do, and the cameras kept rolling. In just minutes, a trial everyone thought they understood had turned into something else entirely. What no one realized yet was that this little girl and this young man were connected in ways even they didn't fully know, and still, they didn't throw her out. That shocked everyone. Judge Hanlon let Lila sit on a bench near the front while the bailiff whispered in panic to the clerk. Meanwhile, the internet exploded. A shaky live stream spread everywhere. A child just stood up in court and said she would defend a millionaire, clickbait gold, and it was unstoppable. Daniel sat quietly, wrists bound in cuffs, staring at the little girl who had done what even his lawyer refused. He wanted to thank her, but what could he possibly say? Did she even know who he really was? "Court will recess for 20 minutes, Judge Hanlon finally announced. His voice was stern, but now laced with curiosity. "And someone please find this child a guardian before I break every law in the book." The gavel hit. People buzzed with questions as they filed out. But Lila didn't move. She just kept staring at Daniela as if she were trying to read his soul. 2 hours earlier, Lila's morning began like any other. The tiny apartment smelled faintly of last night's fried food. The old TV played a rerun of her grandmother's favorite game show. Grandma Rose lay asleep on the couch, oxygen tube resting under her nose, her snores soft and steady. Lila tiptoed carefully around her. She had school in an hour, but she already knew she wouldn't be going. Not today. Today mattered. She slipped on her worn denim jacket, grabbed the backpack she carried mostly for show inside. Weren't books or pencils, but a thick spiral notebook filled with printouts. Every article she had collected about Daniel Cross. She had spent weeks reading about him at the library. Not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Everyone else saw a rich man who had failed. She saw the one person who had changed her brother's life, if only for a short while. Her brother Marcus was 17 when he joined that coding mentorship program. It gave him hope, a laptop, and the belief that life could be bigger than the limits of their neighborhood in West Haven. But then Marcus was gone. A shooting outside a corner store took him away before he could even finish the program. Lila never blamed Daniel for that. How could she? If anything, she believed he was the only one who had ever truly cared about kids like Marcus, and now, everyone wanted to see him in prison for something she believed with all her heart he hadn't done. "How do you know, Lila?" Classmates asked her when she spoke about it at school. She never answered. But deep inside, she held on to that faith. She believed in him more than anyone else believed in her. So she skipped class, walked to the courthouse, and sat in the gallery for hours, waiting. And when that lawyer abandoned him, something cracked inside her. If no one else would fight for him, then she would. Back in the courthouse hallway, chaos exploded. Reporters swarmed anyone who looked like they might know the girl Lila kept. Her head low as a court officer led her into a small waiting room. "Sweetheart, who's your parent or guardian?" the woman asked gently. "My grandma, she's at home. You have a phone number for her?" Lila nodded, scribbled it on a scrap of paper. The officer called, but there was no answer. Grandma Rose slept deeply when she was tired. Lila sat quietly, legs swinging until the door creaked open. And there he was, Daniel, still in cuffs, escorted by 2 deputies. Yet his eyes locked directly on her. "You," he said softly, like he couldn't believe she was real. "Why would you do that?" Lila looked up at him and shrugged. "Because you didn't do it?" Daniel blinked. "You don't even know me." "Yes, I do," she replied simply. "You helped my brother." The deputies exchanged quick looks. "What's your name?" Daniel asked. "Lila, I'm sorry about your brother," Daniel whispered. "I didn't know." She nodded as if she had expected that. "You gave him something nobody else would. That means something." Before he could respond, the deputies pulled him toward the side door. He looked like he wanted to say more, but couldn't. Lila sat gripping her notebook, her heart pounding. If the judge gave her the chance, she was ready. She had memorized everything, every date, every detail. She was determined to make them listen. But what she didn't know was that stepping up for Daniel would throw her straight into a storm bigger than she could imagine. Before the handcuffs, before the courtroom, Daniel Cross had everything. He wasn't born rich, not even close. He grew up in a small Ohio town, raised by a single mother. She worked 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. When he was 15, he found a broken laptop someone had tossed out. He fixed it, piece by piece. That old machine changed his life. By 19, he launched his first app from a cramped dorm room in Cleveland. By 24, he was a millionaire. By 27, headlines were calling him a visionary, a prodigy, a genius. Investors couldn't wait to back his company. Bright Path wasn't just another app, it was a lifeline. It connected underprivileged kids with scholarships, internships, and mentors during the pandemic. When schools closed and jobs vanished, BrightPath kept kids learning, kept food on tables, gave families hope when the world seemed to have none. But good headlines never last. 3 months ago, everything flipped upside down. A fire broke out in an abandoned warehouse in Riverton. Inside, police discovered a man beaten nearly to death. That man was Anthony Ward, a business rival Daniel had clashed with publicly over patents the same night. An eyewitness swore they saw Daniel near that warehouse. The story spread like wildfire. Rising Star attacks competitor in shady dispute. Daniel denied it. I wasn't even in Riverton that night. But then came the evidence. His phone pinged near the city limits. His rental car appeared on a traffic cam, and worse, during a raid at his office, they found stacks of cash hidden in a safe, thousands in Bilsa. Strange move for a man who lived entirely digital. The press shredded him. Sponsors cut ties. Investors vanished. People who once praised him now acted like they'd never heard his name. Then came the indictment. Attempted murder, conspiracy, aggravated assault. Daniel knew the truth. He had never touched Anthony Ward. He had no idea how the man ended up in that warehouse, but the evidence screamed guilt. And the more he protested, the more everyone believed he was lying. The only person left in his corner was his lawyer, Marcus Carter, until this morning. The 20-minute recess stretched into an hour. Daniel sat in a holding room, staring at the blank cinder block wall. He didn't pray much, but today he prayed someone, anyone, would believe him. The door opened. Deputy stepped in. "You've got 5 minutes." Daniel looked up and saw her again. Lila, small frame, big eyes, notebook clutched to her chest like a shield. "How did you even get in here?" he asked. The deputy shrugged. Judge said, "Let her talk." Daniel almost laughed. "This is insane." Lila stepped closer. "Why'd your lawyer quit?" Daniel exhaled, weary. "Because I wouldn't lie. He wanted me to admit I was there, but say I didn't." "Do it! I told him I wasn't there at all." "Were you?" "No." His voice came out sharp, defensive, then softened. "I wasn't." Lila studied him like she was checking homework. "Then why'd they say your phone was in Riverton?" I don't." "No," he rubbed his wrists against the cuffs. "I think someone set me up." "Who?" "I wish I knew." Lila flipped open her notebook. It was stuffed with articles, scribbled notes, pages covered in blue ink. "I've read everything about you. You gave out laptops, you paid for summer camps, you sent kids to college. Yeah, so you don't sound like someone who'd nearly beat a man to death." Daniel smirked bitterly. "Tell that to the world." "I will," she said firmly. He blinked. "You really think anyone's going to listen to you?" "They better," she shot back, "because I'm not lying." For the first time in weeks, Daniel felt something he thought he'd lost completely. Hope. It was absurd. A man once called a genius finding hope in a 9-year-old with braids and a stubborn streak. But there it was. Before the deputy could pull him away, Daniel leaned forward. "Lila, why are you doing this?" "Really?" She looked him dead in the eye, "Because nobody believed my brother either." Daniel froze. "What do you mean?" She swallowed hard. "When Marcus died, they said he was just another gang kid, but he wasn't. He wanted to code. He wanted to build apps. He wanted to work for you one day, and nobody cared. Not the police. Not the news. Nobody told his story right, so I'm telling yours." The deputy tapped his watch. "Time's up." As they led Daniel away, his throat tightened. He didn't know if Lila could truly help him. But for the first time in months, someone saw him as more than a headline. Neither of them knew yet that the truth about the warehouse was far uglier than either could imagine. The courtroom buzzed louder when Judge Hanlon returned. Everyone wanted to know what would happen next. Cameras kept. Rolling social media devoured every second hashtags. Trended, Kid Defender, Free Daniel Land who, eyes Leela sat tall when the judge called the session back to order. Her feet barely brushed the floor, but her eyes didn't waver. She was ready, Miss Matthews. Judge Hanlon began. I respect your passion, but you are not licensed to represent anyone in this court. I know, sir, Lila said quickly. I'm not trying to be a lawyer. I just need you to hear me out. Please. The judge studied her for a long moment. 1 minute, he said. Finally, make it count. Reporters leaned forward like a championship game was about to begin. Lila clutched her notebook, stepped into the center of the courtroom. Her voice trembled at first, then steadied. Everybody thinks he did it. Because of a phone ping and some video, but I read the reports and it doesn't add up. They said Mr. Cross was in Riverton the night Anthony Ward was attacked. But his flight records show he left Los Angeles at 7:00 p.m. and didn't land in Ohio until after midnight. That warehouse is clear on the opposite side of the state. That's hours away. A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd. Even Daniel turned, stunned. I know people say kids don't understand grown-up things, Lila continued, but math is math. He couldn't have been in both places. Somebody lied, and whoever lied is trying real hard to make y'all hate him. The prosecutor shot up. Objection. Sit down, Judge Hanlon snapped. You'll get your turn. Lila flipped the page of her notebook. And another thing, why would he even do it? What would he gain by beating some man in a warehouse? Nothing. But Mr. Ward, he had a reason to hurt himself, or to make it look like someone else did. I read the article Ward's company was about to lose a massive deal to Brightpath. If Daniel went to jail, guess who gets that deal back now? The entire room erupted in murmurs. The prosecutor tried to cut her off again, but the judge slammed his gavel. Enough, Miss Matthews, your time is up. Lila bit her lip and nodded. Thank you for listening. As she walked back to her seat, the judge glanced at Daniel for the first time all day. His expression softened, just a little. The recess turned into a scheduling break. Court would resume tomorrow. Reporters sprinted out like horses at the starting bell, hungry for interviews and headlines. But Daniel didn't care about them. He cared about the little girl now, hugging her notebook like it held the whole world. Outside, the sky burned pale orange. The courthouse steps overflowed with cameras, lights, and shouts. In the middle of it all, Lila stood alone, scanning the crowd. She knew her grandmother was probably worried sick, but she didn't have a phone. Then a voice cut through the noise. Lila! She turned and saw her grandmother pushing through the crowd. Tall, tired eyes, scarf over her hair, knees aching, but moving fast anyway. Girl, what on earth? Grandma Rose grabbed her shoulders, looking her over. You got the whole city talking about you. I had to, Grandma, Lila said softly. Nobody else was going to help him? Rose sighed, rubbing her forehead. Baby, you can't just stand up in court like you're Perry Mason. He didn't do it, Lila insisted. Rose opened her mouth to argue, then shut it. She recognized that stubborn fire in her granddaughter's eyes. It was the same look her daughter once had. A man in a gray suit stepped forward. Microphone in hand, Lila, Mrs. Matthews, Channel 7 News. Can we get a comment? Rose moved in front of her. Not today. She gripped Lila's hand and pulled her quickly down the steps. Neither of them noticed the black SUV parked across the street. Inside, a man watched through tinted glass, his face hidden under a cap. His phone buzzed. He answered with a single word. Problem. That night, Lila sat on the edge of her bed, watching her grandmother pace. The apartment felt even smaller with the TV blasting. Every channel replayed her courtroom words, like a movie trailer on repeat. Rose stopped pacing and sat beside her baby. Why does this matter so much to you? Really? Lila stared at the peeling paint on the wall because he cared about us. About Marcus? Nobody else did? Rose's face softened. You think helping this man is going to bring Marcus back? No, Lila whispered, but maybe it means he didn't die for nothing. Rose sighed, then pulled her close. For the first time that day, Lila let the tears come. Across town, Daniel lay in a jail cell staring at the ceiling. Lila's words echoed. In his mind, like a broken record, somebody lied. He believed her, but who? His thoughts were cut short when a guard appeared at the bars. You've got a visitor, Daniel frowned. At this hour, he sat up as the guard unlocked the door and led him into the visitor's room. Daniel's blood ran cold sitting. There was a face he thought he'd never see again, and what this man was about to say would turn everything upside down. Daniel froze when he saw the man waiting in the visitor's room. Caleb, he whispered. Caleb Morgan, the friend who had once been like a brother, his first business partner, back before money and pride tore them apart. They hadn't spoken in nearly 2 years. Caleb leaned back in his chair, calm, smug. You look like hell. Daniel sat down slowly, chains clinking against the floor. What are you doing here? Checking on an old friend, Caleb said with a smile that never touched his eyes. Or what's left of him. Daniel clenched his jaw. You set me up, Caleb, chuckled. Relax, detective. I didn't lay a hand on Ward, I'm not that sloppy, but you wanted me to take the fall. Wanted? Caleb tilted his head, grinning. Still do? Daniel's stomach dropped. Why, Caleb? I gave you everything. I pulled you into Bright Path when nobody else believed in us. You pulled me in, Caleb snapped, and then you shoved me out. You thought. You were better than me, so I found someone who thought I was worth more? Daniel stared at him, already knowing the answer. Ward. Bingo. Caleb leaned forward. Eyes cold. He wanted you gone. I wanted revenge. Win-win. Daniel's pulse hammered in his ears. You framed me. You used my phone. Cloned your SIM, Caleb said with a smirk. Easy that rental car? A gift from me to you. You should have seen your face when the cops showed up, priceless. You think you'll get away with this? Caleb shrugged. Who's gonna believe you? The world loves a fall from grace. You're not a hero anymore. Daniel, you're just a headline. And tomorrow, you'll be a conviction. Daniel's hands trembled under the table. Why are you telling me this? Because I wanted you to know it. Wasn't luck that took you down. It was me. Caleb stood, buttoning his jacket. Enjoy your last night as a free man. The guard returned to escort Daniel out. He didn't resist. He couldn't. The betrayal sat like a stone in his chest across town. Lila sat in the living room while her grandmother dozed in the recliner. The news replayed her clip again and again. Her name scrolled across the bottom of the screen with headlines like, "In-year-old defends accused millionaire." She should have. Felt proud instead, she felt restless. Something was missing. Lila opened her notebook. Scanning every detail, flight times, traffic cams. The warehouse, then her eyes stopped on one name, Caleb Morgan. She remembered it from an old article about Bright Path's early days. He had been there at the start, then disappeared after a lawsuit, and now, nothing until today, Grandma, Lila whispered, nudging Rose awake. We have to go back tomorrow early, Rose groaned. Lord, child, you trying to put me in the hospital? I think I know who set him up. Rose blinked, staring at her like she'd lost her mind. Lila, I'm serious, Grandma. If I'm right, this isn't just about Daniel, it's about people who think they can do whatever they want and nobody's going to stop them. The next morning, court was chaos. Reporters packed the steps like sardines. Protesters shouted on both sides. Some held free Daniel signs, others yelled, "Lock him up!" Inside, Daniel shuffled in with dark circles under his eyes. He barely noticed the cameras anymore. All he could see was Caleb's smirk still haunting him. Then he saw Lila in the front row. She gave him a tiny nod, like, don't give up yet. The hearing began. The prosecutor stood, smug and ready to seal the case. Your Honor, the evidence is clear. Phone records place the defendant near the scene. He had a financial motive. Objection. Every head turned. It wasn't a lawyer. It was Lila again. Judge Hanlon slammed his gavel. Miss Matthews. Just let me show you one thing, she pleaded, waving her notebook. One thing, and if I'm wrong, I'll sit down and never speak. Again. The courtroom buzzed like a hive of bees. Cameras zoomed in. The judge pinched the bridge of his nose. 30 seconds. Lila sprinted to the front, notebook clutched tight in her hands. She flipped to a page and slapped it on the desk. This, she said, pointing to a printout, is an email from BrightPath's old public folder. It's years old, but look, Caleb Morgan's name, he was the co-founder, everybody forgot about him. But guess what? Last week he was meeting with Anthony Ward's lawyers. The prosecutor scoffed. That proves nothing. Then why, Lila said loudly, did Caleb buy a plane ticket to Riverton the same day Mr. Ward got hurt? Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Reporters scrambled for their phones. Daniel stared at her, stunned. How did she even find that? Judge Hanlon leaned forward. Is this true, counselor? The prosecutor stammered, I'm not aware. Then, you'd better get aware, the judge barked. Court will recess for 2 hours while I review this. Gavel down. Chaos erupted. As deputies led Daniel out, he locked eyes with Lila for the first time in days. He felt like maybe, just maybe, he had a chance. But no one realized Caleb Morgan wasn't done yet, and his next move could cost someone their life. 2 hours later, the courtroom felt like a pressure cooker. Reporters whispered, cameras rolled, social media exploded with theories. Who is Caleb Morgan? Did the kid just crack the case? When Judge Hanlon returned, the air was so tight you could almost hear hearts pounding. After reviewing the evidence presented, he said, this court has serious concerns about the integrity of the state's case. He adjusted his glasses, eyes cutting toward the prosecutor, and even more concerns about the thoroughness of this investigation. The prosecutor's face burned red. Therefore, the judge continued, I am ordering the immediate release of Mr. Cross on bond. Furthermore, the court is requesting a formal inquiry into the actions of one Caleb Morgan. The room exploded. People jumped to their feet. Reporters surged forward in a tidal wave of flashing lights. Daniel sat frozen for a moment, then exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The deputies removed his cuffs for the first time in weeks. His wrists were free. He turned. And there she was, Lila, standing on the bench to see over the crowd, grinning so wide her cheeks hurt. He walked straight to her. The cameras loved it, but Daniel didn't care. He knelt down, eye level with her, his voice breaking as he said, You saved me. Lila shook her head. Nah, you saved Marcus. I just finished the job. He smiled, tears stinging his eyes. Your brother would be proud. Her smile wavered. I hope so. Grandma Rose came over, shaking her head but smiling too. You sure know how to stir a pot, little girl, Lila giggled. Guess it runs in the family. Outside, the chaos didn't stop. Reporters shouted questions. Mix shoved in their faces, but Daniel gently wrapped his arm around Lila's shoulders as security guided them toward a car. Can I ask you something? Daniel said quietly as they walked. Yeah? Why didn't you give up? Even when everybody said I was guilty, Lila thought for a second, then looked up at him and said the words that would end up on 1,000,000 news clips that night. Because when the world calls you a liar, somebody's got to remember the truth. And sometimes that somebody is a kid. Daniel smiled. For the first time in a long time, he felt human again. Not a headline, not a scandal, just a man who got a second chance. A week later, Caleb Morgan was in handcuffs. Evidence tied him to Ward, the warehouse, and the setup. The headlines flipped overnight from fallen star to framed victim. BrightPath stock soared, but Daniel didn't care about that. What mattered was sitting at a small kitchen table in West Haven sharing fried chicken with a little girl and her grandmother. You know, Daniel said between bites, Make one heck of a lawyer someday, Lila grinned. You think so? I know so. She smiled, eyes bright. Then you better keep out of trouble, Mr. Cross, 'cause next time I'm charging you. They all laughed, the kind of laugh that feels like breathing again after drowning. And here's the thing. This wasn't just about a young entrepreneur and a kid. It was about loyalty, about speaking up when no one else would, about believing in someone even when the whole world said, don't. So if you take anything from this story, let it be this. Don't underestimate the power of your voice.